Whenever you're ready.
Wait, I gotta prepare. No giggling.
A Hawaiian tragedy. I looked across the bow of the ship and could see large plumes of smoke coming up from Ford Island. At first we didn't realize it was a bombing. It didn't mean anything to us until a large group of planes came near the ship and we could see for the first time the rising sun emblem on the plane wings. The bombing was becoming heavier all around us and we knew this was really it. This is a direct quote from George Franner, one of the mechanists on the USS Arizona. Now, unfortunately, the Arizona was only one of the many ships that were destroyed at the attack of Pearl Harbor. And I realized my interest in the attack when I went to Washington, D.C. and saw the Pearl Harbor Memorial. Today, I am going to inform you on the before, during, and after of the attack of Pearl Harbor. Before the attack. According to pearlharbor.org, we're discovering that Japan was starting to take over Indochina. Now, although the U.S. was not actually in the war, this really affected them in their decision to come back and help Indochina and receive them. Therefore, they placed an embargo act on Japan, and these are the parts that were being taken over by Japan at the time. And this embargo made it so that there was no oil trade between Japan and any other raw material such as scrap metal. Now, if there was no oil, this really angered Japanese military because that meant none of the engines or machinery could work during their invasions. Then, on April of 1941, Japan signed a neutrality act with Soviet Union. And this basically gave them a safety line on the above part of Asia so that either Britain or the United States could not attack. Then, at the end of 1941, the Soviet Union was beginning to lose the Axis powers. Now, this opened up such parts down here below Asia, which was Southeast Asia, was a major part in oil. So this led to Japan being able to take a bigger bite out of the rest of Asia. Now, the U.S. wanted to stop this expansion, but they did not want to go to war yet. So they simply asked Japan to remove themselves, and they would have much rather had a token of withdrawal and have them not take any more land. Now, before 1941, Japan had two goals. These two goals were to remove the Embargo Act, which would help them still have the trade of raw materials such as oil, and they also were preparing for war. Now, these are some pictures of the U.S. or the Japanese military who were in charge of this preparing for war, and the head of this preparation was General Tojo Hideki. Now, he planned on making November 29th the last day for any agreements to be made between Japan and U.S. as peaceful agreements. So their plan was basically to take over all of Asia and as much as they could of any other parts of the world. Now, why did they take over Pearl Harbor? It states that they could have been possibly in the way. Now, even though we still were at war, they felt that Pearl Harbor could have possibly been in the way of their invasions. Now to the during aspect. You may be surprised to know that we actually did know about the submarines that were being under the Japanese military. According to From Horror to Okinawa, the Entrees, one of the patrol boats on the outside of Pearl Harbor, had seen a submarine at 6:30 a.m. Now, there were supposed to be no submarines in this part. And another submarine, the Condor, also had seen a sub at 5:04 a.m. Now, both of these submarines were reported to Ward, the major patrol boat, and this is a picture of one of the submarines that was found. Now, as soon as the Ward found the submarine, they took two shots. The first shot, unfortunately, missed, but the second shot was successful and sunk the ship. And this could have possibly been the sub. Now, the rest of the attack began at 7 a.m. And there was a large Japanese fleet that was on its way. The fleet contained 2 battleships, an assortment of cruisers, destroyers, submarines, torpedo bombers, dive bombers, and fighter planes. Now, they had actually left Japan on November 26th and weren't discovered until December 7th. That means that this giant fleet of Japanese military went unseen for nearly 13 days. And this is a picture of the attack. That's mainly what it all looked like. The whole Pearl Harbor just looked like a bunch of smoke. And this is a video, or no, this is another picture of Pearl Harbor. That might have been other large ships, such as USS Arizona. And this is a video from a civilian who was watching all this happen. You can see all the smoke that was occurring. And you'll see white planes come in. You see that? You can barely see it, but there's a white plane there, and those were all the Japanese planes. And you can see all the bombs that were being dropped. Then you'll see gray planes, which is actually the U.S. trying to fight back, right there. And then there's actually a siren that goes off, and as you know, if you've seen the movie Pearl Harbor, the siren is like telling the civilians that we're being attacked. And the battle actually ended at 9:45, and although it wasn't long, it did numerous damages. So, according to Naval History and Heritage Command, there were only 5 ships that were destroyed or sunk. And these 5 ships, here's one of the ships that were destroyed. Now, I'm sure that these lifeboats were trying to save it, but the boat was much too heavy for them to pull it back out of the water. And the 5 ships were the Arizona, Oklahoma, California, West Virginia, and Utah. Now, although 5 ships doesn't sound like a lot, each of these ships could have carried up to 1,000 people. Now, that means up to 5,000 men or women were killed. And then along with the people on the aircraft bases that were killed, along with civilians that were also killed. So the death rates were numerous. This is a picture of an aircraft that went up on shore and was cut in half, and there's just some men feeling sad after the attack. And here are some wounded men after the attack, and these wounds weren't even that bad. There were people who lost limbs and eventually died. Now, it's said that nearly 1,778 men and women were wounded, and 2,403 were either killed, missing, or mortally wounded. And then this is a picture of President Roosevelt. And at 12:30 that same day, President Roosevelt demanded a declaration of war against Japan. Now, many of Americans were still upset and they did not want to go to war, but President Roosevelt quickly changed their minds and told him that we needed to go to war and that Japan had tricked us into thinking that this was going to be something peaceful and we weren't going to have to go to war. So they quickly changed their minds, and at 4:10, President Roosevelt signed the declaration, and we were now at war with Japan. And then 3 days later, Italy, Germany, and the other Axis powers had also joined up and went against America. We were now into the war 2 years and 3 months. And I'm sure many of the countries were not expecting us to win, but we did. So today, as you can see, the pictures are being passed around. Joey, can I have these pictures? The Pearl Harbor is now much of a tourist attraction. And this is Pearl Harbor today. This is a memorial of the USS Nevada. That right there was probably where the ship had been sunk. And this is the memorial of USS Arizona. And you can actually walk inside of it and look over the Pearl Harbor. And this is Pearl Harbor as a whole. You can see the USS Arizona memorial there. And that's one of the ships that was preserved. And this is a sunken submarine under the water. You can still see the top. And there's many other, in Hawaii, the water's so clear that you can actually see through to the bottom to see the other wreckage. Now, not only was this attack a surprise to George Franer, the mechanist on the USS Arizona, but it was a surprise to America as a whole. On December 7th, it was an awful day before, during, and after the attack. All in all, the Hawaiian tragedy has affected America forever, and Pearl Harbor will never be forgotten.
Hi, Butchie. ties.